My name is Linda Lawton. I'm Senior Curator at the South Australian Maritime Museum, and this exhibition, Rough Medicine, Life and Death in the Age of Sail, looks at the way illness shapes sea voyages and the changing role of the ship's surgeon. I think it's very hard for us to imagine how it would have smelt below decks on a migrant ship. Essentially, you would have had the smells of people vomiting. Seasickness was a huge problem, mixed with overflowing water closets, mixed with dirty nappies, rotting food, fetid bilge water, and they often carried livestock on board too to kill during the journey. So that would have been one of the most dramatic things that would have hit you if you climbed on board a migrant ship. In 1814, 3 convict ships docked in Sydney Harbour with a terrible loss of life. Surgeon William Redfern was called to investigate. He was an ex-convict himself. He issued a report saying that regimes of cleanliness had to be instituted, that surgeons had to have a lot more authority on ships, and things like diet had to be improved. So these regimes dramatically lowered the death rate on convict ships after 1814 and provided the template for the Passengers Act that safeguarded migrants travelling to Australia after that. The emigrants are to be out of bed at 7, the children to be washed and dressed and the decks swept, including the space under the bottom boards of the berths, which are to be listed for the purpose every morning. Basically, right up until the end of the 19th century, almost, they believed that disease was caused by bad air or miasmas. So if something smelt foul, the idea was that it was probably going to make you sick. In some ways that makes a lot of sense, but their cures were fairly interesting. In medieval times you carried around sweet-smelling herbs to stave off not only the bad smells, but the stuff that was going to hurt you. There weren't really any cures for venereal disease, but they thought they had it sorted. Essentially, sailors who contracted syphilis were injected, usually using a bone or a pewter syringe, with some sort of mercurial solution. They also had mercurial ointments that they rubbed on them. Mercury is a heavy metal, and unfortunately a lot of ship surgeons thought they were getting to a cure when their patients started to drool, which meant they'd been poisoned by mercury. I think it's probably the shroud that we have wrapped around a mannequin of a toddler. Essentially, we commissioned a sailmaker, a traditional sailmaker, to stitch that shroud, and he researched the sort of stitch they would have used. And when he was sewing it up, he was actually quite moved by that process. One of the curious things about being buried at sea was traditionally the last stitch went through the nose, just to make sure that the person was actually dead. This is one of my favourite objects in the exhibition. It was a sampler embroidered by Ellen Mosier when she was young, and it was brought out on the Moffat when she migrated to South Australia in 1840. And during this voyage she buried 3 of her children, and she basically lost her senses. The phrase in the centre is, "To where thy hallowed bones are laid, far from the busy haunts of men." And to me it's prophetic.